Thank you for joining us for Grim Advice with Gretta Myers. You've entered the grimoire. Let's turn the page together. And without further ado, the three little men in the wood. There was once a man whose wife died, and a woman whose husband died, and the man had a daughter, and the woman also had a daughter. The girls were acquainted with each other and went out walking together, and afterwards came to the woman in her house. Then she said to the man's daughter, "Listen, tell your father that I would like to marry him, and then you shall wash yourself in milk every morning and drink wine, but mine own daughter shall wash herself in water and drink water." The girl went home and told her father what the woman had said. The man said, "What shall I do? Marriage is a joy and also a torment." At length, as he could come to no decision, he pulled off his boot and said, "Take this boot. It has a hole in the sole of it. Go with it up to the loft, hang it on the big nail, and then pour water into it. If it holds the water, then I will again take a wife, but if it runs through, I will not." The girl did as she was ordered, but the water drew the hole together, and the boot became full to the top. She informed her father how it turned out. Then he himself went up, and when he saw that she was right, he went to the widow and wooed her, and the wedding was celebrated. The next morning, when the two girls got up, there stood before the man's daughter milk for her to wash in and wine for her to drink. But before the woman's daughter stood water to wash herself with and water for drinking. On the second morning stood milk for washing and wine for drinking before the man's daughter, as well as water before the woman's daughter. And on the third morning stood water for washing and water for drinking before the man's daughter, and milk for washing and wine for drinking before the woman's daughter. And so it continued. The woman became bitterly unkind to her stepdaughter, and day by day did her best to treat her still worse. She was also envious because her stepdaughter was beautiful and lovable, and her own daughter ugly and repulsive. Once in winter, when everything was frozen, as hard as a stone, and hill and vale lay covered with snow, the woman made a frock of paper, called her stepdaughter, and said, "Here, put on this dress and go out into the wood, and fetch me a little basket full of strawberries. I have a fancy for some." "Good heavens," said the girl, "no strawberries grow in winter. The ground is frozen, and besides, the snow has covered everything, and why am I to go in this paper frock? It is so cold outside that one's very breath freezes. The wind will blow through the frock, and the thorns will tear it off my body." "Will you contradict me again?" said the stepmother. "See that you go, and do not show your face again until you have the basket full of strawberries." And she gave her a little piece of hard bread and said, "This will last you the day," and thought, "You will die of cold and hunger outside, and will never be seen again by me." Then the maiden was confident and put on the paper frock. The maiden was obedient and put on the paper frock and went out with the basket. Far and wide there was nothing but snow, and not a green blade to be seen. And when she got into the wood, she saw a small house, out of which peeped 3 elves. She wished them good day, and knocked modestly at the door. They cried, "Come in," and she entered the room, and seated herself on the bench by the stove, where she began to warm herself and eat her breakfast. The elf said, "Give us too some of it." "Willingly," she said, and divided her bit of bread in 2, and gave them the half. They asked, "What are you doing in the forest in the winter time in your thin dress?" "Ah," she answered, "I am to look for a basket full of strawberries, and I'm not to go home until I can take them with me." When she had eaten her bread, they gave her a broom and said, "Sweep away the snow at the back door with it." But when she was outside, the 3 little men said to each other, "What shall we give her that she is so good and has shared her bread with us?" Then said the first, "My gift is that she shall every day grow more beautiful." The second said, "My gift is that gold pieces shall fall out of her mouth every time she speaks." The third said, "My gift is that a king shall come and take her as wife." The girl, however, did as the little men had bidden her, swept away the snow behind the little house with the broom, and what did she find but real ripe strawberries, which came up quite dark red out of the snow. In her joy she hastily gathered her basketful, thanked the little men, shook hands with each of them, and ran home to take her stepmother what she had longed for so much. When she went in and said good evening, a piece of gold at once fell from her mouth. Thereupon she related what had happened to her in the wood. But with every word she spoke, gold pieces fell from her mouth, until very soon the whole room was covered with them. "Now look at her arrogance," cried the stepsister, "to throw about gold in that way," but she was secretly envious of it, and wanted to go into the forest also to seek strawberries. The mother said, "No, my dear little daughter, it is too cold, you might die of cold." However, as her daughter let her have no peace, the mother at last yielded, made her a magnificent dress of fur, which she was obliged to put on, and gave her bread and butter and cake to take with her. The girl went into the forest and straight up to the little house. The 3 little elves peeped out again, but she did not greet them, and without looking round at them, and without speaking to them, she went awkwardly into the room, seated herself by the stove, and began to eat her bread and butter and cake. "Give us some of it," cried the little men, but she replied, "There is not enough for myself, so how can I give it away to other people?" When she had finished eating, they said, "There's a broom for you, sweep all clean for us outside by the back door." "Ha! Sweep for yourselves," she answered, "I am not your servant." When she saw that they were not going to give her anything, she went out by the door. Then the little men said to each other, "What shall we give her, as she is so naughty, and has a wicked, envious heart, and that will never let her do a good deed for anyone?" The first said, "I grant that she may grow uglier every day." The second said, "I grant that at every word she says, a toad shall spring out of her mouth." The third said, "I grant that she may die a miserable death." The maiden looked for strawberries outside, but as she found none, she went angrily home, and when she opened her mouth and was about to tell her mother what had happened to her in the wood, with every word of it, a toad sprang out of her mouth, so that everyone was seized with horror of her. Then the stepmother was still more enraged, and thought of nothing but how to do every possible injury to the man's daughter, whose beauty, however, grew daily greater. At length she took a cauldron, set it on the fire, and boiled yarn in it. When it was boiled, she flung it on the poor girl's shoulder, gave her an axe in order that she might go to the frozen river, cut a hole in the ice, and rinse the yarn. She was obedient, and went and cut a hole in the ice, and while she was in the midst of her cutting, a splendid carriage came driving up, in which sat the king. The carriage stopped, and the king asked, "My child, who are you, and what are you doing here?" "I am a poor girl, and I am rinsing yarn." Then the king felt compassion, and when he saw that she was so very beautiful, he said to her, "Will you go away with me?" "Ah, yes, with all my heart," she answered, for she was glad to get away from the mother and sister. So she got into the carriage and drove away with the king, and when they arrived at his palace, the wedding was celebrated with great pomp, as the little men had granted to the maiden. When a year was over, the young queen bore a son, and as the stepmother had heard of her great good fortune, she came with her daughter to the palace and pretended that she wanted to pay her a visit. Once, however, the king had gone out, and no one else was present. The wicked woman seized the queen by the head, and her daughter seized her by the feet, and they lifted her out of the bed and threw her out into of the window into the stream which flowed by. Then the ugly daughter laid herself in the bed, and the old woman covered her up over her head. When the king came home again and wanted to speak to his wife, the old woman cried, "Hush, hush, that can't be now. She is lying in a violent perspiration. You must let her rest today." The king suspected no evil, and did not come back until next morning, and as he talked with his wife and she answered him, with every word a toad leaped out, whereas formerly a piece of gold had fallen out. Then he asked what that could be, but the old woman said that she had got that from the violent perspiration, and would soon lose it again. During the night, however, the kitchen boy saw a duck come swimming up the gutter, and it said, "King, what are you doing? Are you awake or slumbering?" And as he returned no answer, it said, "And my guests, what about them?" The kitchen boy said, "They are sleeping soundly too." Then it asked again, "What of my little baby mine?" He answered, "Asleep in her cradle." Then she went upstairs in the form of the queen, nursed the baby, shook up its little bed, covered it over, and then swam away again down the gutter in the shape of a duck. She came thus for 2 nights. On the third she said to the kitchen boy, "Go and tell the king to take his sword and swing it 3 times over me on the threshold." Then the kitchen boy ran and told this to the king, who came with his sword and swung it thrice over the healthy the spirit, and at the third time his wife stood before him strong, alive, and healthy as she had been before. At this the king was full of great joy, but he kept the queen hidden in a chamber until the Sunday when the baby was to be christened. And when it was christened, he said, "What does a person deserve who drags another out of bed and throws him in the water?" "The wretch deserves nothing better," answered the old woman, "than to be taken and put in a barrel stuck full of nails and rolled downhill into the water." Then said the king, "You have pronounced your own sentence." And he ordered such a barrel to be brought, and the old woman to be put into it with her daughter, and then the top was hammered on, and the barrel rolled downhill until it went into the river. Again, let's talk about grim capital punishment. You okay there, Brother Scram? You have the ability to imagine some really fun deaths. Also, this had almost the exact same ending as Little Brother and Little Sister. Like, almost the exact same ending. And it's a little freaky, if I'm being completely honest. Again, with the mistaken identity, grim characters, like every time. This is the king's like, "Yep, that's obviously my wife. Totally sounds the same and everything." No. Every time. It just kind of cracks me up. How she's like, "Yep, let's go. Let's 100% leave right now. I don't want to be here anymore. King, take me away. Take me away." Also, what's the thing with the yarn? I don't know. Is this something you have to do? You rinse the yarn? I'm not sure. Okay, are the three little men just trying to top each other the whole time? It's like, well, she's gonna be more beautiful every day. It's like, well, she's gonna have gold come out of her mouth. The third guy's like, she's gonna get married to the king. Yeah. Like, are they just trying to top each other the whole time? Just, it's like, you know what? Fight me. I can be a better fairy god elf. Okay, and like the dialectic statement, I loved it. I didn't even have to like make this one up where he was like, marriage is a joy and also torment. Like, good job, man. But like, what happened to him? He's only mentioned at the beginning. That's it. Like, did she kill him? Also, okay. As we've discussed, the Grimm fairy tales, like, a lot of them show the poverty of the time of the Grimm brothers. Where it was like they did not have money. But, like, they're bathing in milk and drinking wine. Like, I realize, like, wine isn't as big of a deal, like, back then, but the guy has a hole in his boot, so is he, like, marrying up in class? Is that what's going on? How do you make a dress out of paper and then fur? Like, I'm confused, personally. And again, this is definitely weird. And yeah, with the paper dress and then the I don't know, man. It's weird. Also, did nobody see? Like, they threw the queen out the window. Did nobody see that? How did... also, this totally sounds, I mean, clearly there's obviously some overlap in stories because the ending is almost the exact same as Little Brother and Little Sister. So, honestly, this sounds like a mashup between Toads and Diamonds and Snow White. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Change my mind. You can't. Okay. Also, okay, here's a personal thing. Just talk about, the parental impression right there. Like, when you're going to someone's house and you care about that person, you want their parents to like you. I mean, all the time, you get married, so you want the parents to like you. For me, even just as friends, when I'm going to my friend's house the first time, I'm like, I'm pretty nervous because I know that, if the parents like you, then the friendship, it's just a lot less stress because the parents aren't like, I don't like her, go away, but, I don't know. So, just imagining it being the other way around. She goes to her friend's house, this girl, and the mom's like, hey you, I want to marry your dad, so this is my good first impression. You get to bathe in milk and drink wine. Why is bathing in milk, such a... wouldn't that be unhygienic? Especially considering pasteurization hadn't been invented yet. I don't know. Maybe it's just the idea of, the excess of, oh, I get to bathe in milk. I don't know, I wouldn't want to bathe in milk. But just, imagining, is the other way around, the parents trying to impress you, that's just, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, let's circle it back and hop aboard the sane train. Woot woot. Okay, so we've kind of picked up a theme. Sweet, nice, kind, friendly, courteous, obedient girls get the guy, the goal, the good things, whatever. Good things happen to people who are good. It's just popped up again and again. Not just girls, good guys get the good stuff and the girl and the whatever. And, in the introduction, we talked about that too, how that was what the Grimm brothers were going for. The good prevails. Not even just over evil forces, just in general, if you do good stuff happens. Yeah, and so, generally speaking, it's a good idea to do good things. And spreading the dialectic jam over the piece of toast so that it's all good and wonderful and jammy. You don't want to, we don't want to be Cinderella, who's doing everything and, bending over backwards being a slave. And I mean, obviously hers was a different situation. She was forced to, especially, because you can't just leave your household. But when we get to Cinderella, I will totally pick that back up, but that is not this time. Anyways, the point is, you can quickly go from just nice and helpful and friendly and a good friend to just, this good, happy, vibing person that's yes, I can be the buddy TM, to someone who's, bending over backwards to be a people pleaser. But Greta, shh! No buts. I only say this because I have done the exact same thing. A lot. Is one of the things I struggle with personally, is this balance on our dialectic piece of toast. So what has helped me with that? You are hypothetically asking right now? One, I accept that because this is something I struggle with, I'm not going to be perfect. So if I mess up, that's okay. Does that mean I'm going to just stop trying and be like, oh, I can't help it, it's just who I am? No. No. No, no, no. I'm not going to do that either. Really, it just comes back to personal boundaries. Again. They're good. They're really good, I promise. So if I've had a rough day, and someone, like, throwing an example out there is like, hey, can you, like, type, like, edit this, like, just see if there's any, like, spelling errors or whatever. Normally I'd be like, yes, I will do that, and I will, like, offer, like, copy edit ideas and, like, sentence materials. If I've had a rough day, I will set that boundary. I'm like, nah. Sorry, man, can't do it today. Or, nah. Sure, man. And I won't do it as with zest. I'll just, like, give it a couple read-throughs and be like, change that. That looks good. See, was I mean when I honored? Well, obviously I don't say Anna to the person. I say it to myself. And I'm like, well, but I could, So the idea, again, bringing that up from, what fairy tale was that? One of the earlier fairy tales, that have your boundaries. It's good to have boundaries. Just be nice about them. And don't play the blame game either, because if you blame yourself, then you're both like, oh no, it's not your fault. It's like, oh no, it's my fault. And then if you blame them, then they're not gonna come to help you for help again, and that's not good. If you care about this person, you don't want one bad day, or week, or year to get in the way of you having. So while it may sound rude to just, like, lay down your boundary and be like, nah, sorry man, I can't today. I really want to help. Here's a funny meme instead. Like a air high five kind of deal. Just, like, letting them know, yeah, I care. And dialectic toast. And I need to do my thing over here so that our thing can keep happening. You know what I'm saying? So if, like, your friend calls you and is like, I am a sad burrito, and I need you to come be in my sad burrito den, my pit of despair with me, and just vibe, just please. But in this example, you are also a sad burrito. You're just like, I can't. That's fine. It's fine. Thank you. My sister reminded me that the boundaries one was Faithful John. Anyways, but if you're sitting there, you know, like, you want to help them, but you know that if you go in their burrito den, in the pit of despair, that it will not end well for both of you, don't do it. Now, just because you can't go in the pit of despair in their burrito den doesn't mean you can, like, lean over the pit and be like, yo man, I can't come down today, but I brought you a ladder and some memes, or, like, some funny videos, or chocolate. So, like, you're offering as much support as you are able to give right now, and so it's up to them now to take it or leave it, or seek help elsewhere. The point is, if you're nice and you don't judge, you don't blame, and you lay down your boundary and be like, I can't today, man, this is why, they'll be like, oh, okay. And they'll, like, you'll be good. You'll still vibe. You'll be good. This is the point. Now, is it the same if you're leaning down in the pit of despair offering them a ladder? No. Is it okay sometimes to go and vibe with them down in their pit of despair? Just be burritos together, vibing and doing all that thing? Yeah, it's okay. As long as both of you can remain emotionally safe while doing that. Empathy is a great thing. It can both grow as people. Your relationship can grow. It can be a beautiful thing. And toast. It can be really bad. Like, it can hurt you worse than if you just nod. Okay, yeah. So set some boundaries with yourself, with people you care about. Let them know, hi, I have decided these are my boundaries. But you gotta set them with yourself first and hold them with yourself first. 'Cause that's better than just trying to hold it with people and then like your internal boundaries like, no, because you didn't set an internal boundary. Trust me on this one. And so that you can continue to do awesome things and help people you care about and be like the buddy TM and like vibe and like just be this happy little bean in your sad little burrito world that you live in. I don't know where that was going. Well, toast, staying safe and happy and you know, not doing so much that you like burn yourself out and you become bitter because you didn't know. You just kept going and going, pushing your helpful little lawnmower until it ran out of gas and you're stuck in the middle of the lawn and everyone's like, what the heck, man? Where are you? I needed your little blades of grass are like, I need you. Where are you? And you're like, I'm dead. I can't help you right now. You picking up anything that I'm laying down? I'm trying, man. I digress. And this has been Grim Advice with Gretta Myers. Thank you for joining us today for another Happily Ever After, or not so happily ever after. That's up for you to decide. Either way, this is the end for this episode, so tune in later to learn more and we can turn a new page together.